Right, just as a forewarning, as an introductory comment, as a pre-titled teaser.
There's an afterword.
Right, hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is, wherever you are, whenever you're watching this. I'm actually recording this on the 1st of October 2022, and this is my video review of a Star Trek episode called Ghosts of Illyria. My name is Paul, so you know. I do the daily teaser, I do other TV and film reviews, and I've tucked my tip jar, if I remember, in the little eye in the corner along with a few helpful links. Like I say, I've been watching Star Trek Strange New World over the past couple of weeks. Last night saw me watching Ghosts of Illyria, episode 3 of the series, and I wanted to tell you about it. Episode 3, Ghosts of Illyria, opens with a by now traditional summary of previous episodes and then shifts, showing us a log entry from First Officer Una Chin Riley, number 1, Rebecca Romaine, that tells us the USS Enterprise is heading to an abandoned Illyrian colony called Hetamit 9. The Illyrians are a species that the Federation refuses to accept as members, as they practice genetic engineering and augmentation, something the Federation has long since banned and made illegal. Despite this, the Enterprise is in orbit around Hetamit 9, as the Federation wants to know why the Illyrians apparently abandoned the place and if they can help any survivors. They're humanitarians after all, but much like number 1 herself, the Federation doesn't like loose ends. However, the landing party itself does not have time to search Hetamit 9, as it has to get off the planet before an oncoming ion storm blocks the transporters. So the party is leaving in something of a rush. Unfortunately, this means that number 1 section of the team make it back in time to the ship, but that Captain Pike and Mr. Spock, Anson Mount and Ethan Peck, don't. That is only the start of everyone's problems. Because once back at the ship, something starts affecting the crew. All but one of them, number 1, start being very attracted to the lights. Back on Hetamit 9, Pike and Spock realise there's something out there in the storm that seems to be howling. What did I make of this episode? Good, bad, or just plain ugly? First things first, and in the awareness I've mentioned it already, have I told you about Strange New World's theme tune? Yes, I did in my write-up and video review of Children of the Comet. You can go check those out by following the playlist links. But I've got to admit, once again, I am impressed both with it and the nods it makes to the original series theme tune, and to Anson Mount's version of the Strange New Worlds monologue, the classic Star Trek Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages, yada yada yada. You've heard it a few times. It's a classic bit of opening monologue that Anson Mount does well and truly does mark this as a Star Trek series. With all due respect to Picard and Discovery, and to Voyager, and to Deep Space Nine, they didn't have that opening section, and it always marked out Star Trek for me when I was growing up watching the original. You're also quite probably going to get sick of me mentioning it. It is rather good. Let's get moving on again. I also have to make a vague extra confession, and I found Ghosts of Illyria's basic idea, the crew dealing, or at least a few of the crew dealing with a sudden mass illness, reminded me of an old classic episode, The Naked Time, and a Next Generation episode, The Naked Now, but with enough differences to make it distinct from both. The MacGuffin in The Naked Time is a complicated molecule that a crew member accidentally touches when he's trying to scratch his nose. The Naked Now has a collapsing star that has the same sort of effect on its crew. And Ghosts of Illyria has a virus, one that causes an apparent addiction to light. Additionally, Ghost of Illyria has two distinct plot lines, and it's something we've seen in other episodes, but not from what I can recall seeing in The Naked Time and The Naked Now. It's got those two plot lines, a main A line that focuses on number one, on Una trying to deal with a disease-ridden ship, whilst trying to help Dr. Mabenga stay free of it so he can find a cure. And it's also got a secondary B line that shows Pike and Spock working out what's happened to the Illyrian colonists. Like I say, that is something we've seen in other Trek episodes, TNG in particular, but it's not something I can recall seeing in The Naked Time and The Naked Now. Although it's been a while since I've seen either, I will be brutally honest there. It's a difference, and it's frankly a welcome one. As I think it has to be said, is the message. Yes, it's true, Ghost of Illyria has a message. Yay! Discrimination is bad. The episode reminds us of a bit of Federation backstory. In its future past, there was an event in the late 90s called the Eugenics Wars, a series of wars fought by and against a set of genetically engineered supermen that included major Star Trek villain Khan Noonien Singh, who's a distant ancestor of Laan Noonien Singh, the ship's security officer, who has her own problems as a result. The net effect of this bit of backstory is that the Federation and Starfleet are left with distinct laws and regulations against genetic modifications, and include ones that discriminate against genetically augmented individuals. It's a prejudice that sees Dr. Bashir in a Deep Space Nine episode called Dr. Bashir, I presume, almost forced out of the service. And it's a prejudice that sees number one in a big dramatic scene handing her resignation to Captain Pike, only to see it be refused. Because, as Pike puts it, you're the best first officer in the fleet. Yes, there's a message. Yes, it's a simplified one, and even if a superficial one as prejudice is bad, but it is still something that Strange New Worlds, or at least this episode of Strange New Worlds, seems to handle very well, and with a light touch and a less heavy-handed, or in a less heavy-handed manner than Star Trek Discovery has. For all its good points, Star Trek Discovery can be a little heavy-handed sometimes, a little obvious, and that's as much as I like it and think well of its very young, talented cast, it's something it can be a bit heavy on occasionally. At any rate, and coming back to my point, I think Ghosts of Illyria is a very good episode, and it's one I thoroughly enjoyed, in part or because its message is there to be seen, but isn't shoved in my face. It's nicely done that way. It tells you, it's an old line of Roddenberry's, from what little I know, that he always told his writers, make a good liberal progressive point if you can, but tell a bloody good story first. And this episode seems to live up to that. Frankly, it's the 1st of October, and I'm going to close up with this video review now, but I'm going to remind you that I'll be watching the next episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Memento Mori, on Friday the 7th of October, and I'm going to be telling you what I thought about the episode on Saturday the 8th of October. I will see you next Friday. Right, as I promised afterward, point one, next Friday, which is when I'll be watching the next episode, is also the release date of the new rebooted Hellraiser that's got quite some involvement from Clive Barker himself, the director of the original film and indeed writer of the original short story. I wouldn't mind seeing that. I'll let you know if I do and what I thought. My second point is simply that in writing this post that this video is based on, I actually mistakenly spelt the word captain as catpin.
The new spectacles turn up next Tuesday.
I'll hopefully see you then.